everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. And we are really excited today. We have another author with us. We love talking with authors. And today we have Becca Kinzer, the author of the new book, Love in Tandem. And Becca, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
I am so excited to be on here.
Yes. So this is your first time on the pod. So why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us a little bit about what inspired you to start writing?
Well, my name's Becca Kinzer. My day job, I've been a nurse in the ICU for about 20 years and with trauma and burns and neuro.
Oh,
And
wow.
growing up, I did always have that desire to be a writer. I always loved that. I always thank my Aunt Linda. She gave me a journal when I was in second grade for Christmas. And I was like, oh, this is the best. I started writing immediately. So that desire to write was always there. But I think, and for a while, I think around middle school age, I was like, oh, when I grow up, I want to be a journalist or, write for a magazine or a newspaper. And then in high school, I kind of had that epiphany of I don't like reading newspapers or magazines. And I
Yeah.
think if I choose a career where I have to write, I'll probably lose my joy of writing because I just wanted to make things up. And it didn't occur to me at that time to be like, well, you could be an author. I was like, yeah, that's not a real job. I got to get a real job. So I also had the desire to be a nurse. I don't know if you remember this, there was a television miniseries that came out in the 80s called The Blue and the Gray. Um,
Oh.
Gregory Peck played Abraham Lincoln. And then there's some
Oh.
other, I don't remember the other actors that were in it. But of course, there's a nurse, like she's one of those genteel ladies whose carriage gets like blown up on the battlefield and she discovers she wants to be a nurse. And I blame that show because it made me think, oh, the life of a nurse is clearly romantic and exciting and she gets to marry the hero at the end. So I blame that for like my other desire, I think, to be a nurse, which I'm not, I mean, I'm glad I've enjoyed being a nurse, but I'm like, it's not nearly as romantic as that Civil War show made it, seem to be. But it was around, so I'd been a nurse for, boy, I don't know. It was 2016 was when my husband had been saying for a few years, because I read all the time, loved reading books. He's like, I bet with all the reading you do, I bet you could write a story. And I was like, well, yeah, and that desire was there. And it was, yeah, 2016 is when I now thank my gynecologist. Her office called me it turned out to be nothing, but it was that phone call. We're like, why are they calling me? I just had an appointment. They say if everything's fine, they'll send me a letter. They didn't send me a letter. Why are they calling me? And my mind immediately went to worst case scenario. Obviously, I'm going to be dead in 6 months. And my biggest regret in that moment was, and you never wrote a story. Like that has been one of your desires all your life. So, of course, I called him back and everything was fine. I'm like, why didn't you send a letter then? But
Yeah, for real. Oh my
it
gosh. Trauma.
right, but it did inspire, it kind of made me realize, obviously, this is really important to you. Like, you thought of that before your own kids and husband in that moment. Like, oh, my regret. So I was telling my husband, I was like, okay, I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to write a book. And it started off as just one of those, even if nobody reads it, even if it only, you and someday the kids read it, that's fine. But once I started, that kicked off that path. I wrote that first book and I just loved it. The process going through it. I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but it didn't matter. I was like, these characters say whatever I want them to say. This is amazing. I can make them kiss in chapter 3 if I want. And
Yeah.
then I finished it and realized I gave it to my family to read. And my mother-in-law was the one that was brutally honest of like, this isn't very good. I was like, what do you mean? And she pointed out, she came over with a binder and it was covered in sticky notes and was like, I'm just confused of the mood of the story. And because it would be like, I was trying to do suspenseful, but then I had like rom-com scenes and she's like, she just got attacked. Now she's, making jokes. I mean, it was a disaster. After that one, though, I knew I wasn't going to stop. I was like, I want to keep writing, but now I actually want to know how to tell a good story that makes sense. So that was when after that experience, started reading more craft books and following blogs about writing and wrote the next story. And anytime I finished a story, then I'd always move on to another story. I'd come back and kind of tweak and play around with those early ones. But then I started like, well, say I wanted to someday get published, like started looking into how does one go about that and following agent blogs. And eventually I got connected with, it's called ACFW, American Christian Fiction Writers, and they have contests for unpublished writers. And I kind of was like, I think this is my plan, and it crazily enough it worked out. I think I got to do well in a contest. That's the only way that I'm going to get in front of agents and editors because they judge in the final round if your
Uh-huh.
entry makes it. So this was, I think, the end of 2018. I entered a contest and it did well. My entry, it was just the first 5 pages. So I entered that one again in 2019, and it was a romantic suspense. Because at that time I still thought, I think I want to write romantic suspense. And kind of as a last minute, I had this other story that I needed to give a title to for the contest. And I was like, I'll call it Dear Henry, Love Edith. It's a cute little story. I don't know what I'm ever going to do with it because it's not suspense, but it was cute. And I thought at that time I wanted any feedback I could get on my writing. So I'm like, I'll just, whatever the judges say, we'll see what happens. And of course, it was that little entry that went
So you
on to,
entered multiple.
I entered two,
Yeah,
yeah.
two.
And they both did well. They both made it to the finals. But it was
Oh.
an editor who judged in the contest reached out to me about Dear Henry, Love Edith over the summer. I was like, hey, I really like this one. Who's your agent? And at that time, I didn't have one. But I said, well, the winner of the contest would get announced later that fall at their big conference, ACFW conference. And I said, I'm going to the conference, and I was planning to pitch to agents. And at that time, so she's like, well, like, she set up an appointment for me to meet with one of the other editors from her publishing house. But Henry and Edith ended up winning at the contest, and then an agent who was there approached me that was like, "Hey, keep me in mind when you're ready to submit." And I was like, "Okay."
Wow.
So yeah, that was 2019. Was like this peak mountaintop experience. Like, this is great. And then 2020 hit. It was the beginning of 2020. I still had to make the story longer. That was the one thing about Dear Henry, Love Edith at that time. It was only about half of the length it really needed to be. So they were like, we love the story idea, but you got to make it longer. I was like, I know, I know. So the end of 2019, like I extended it, wrote more scenes, fleshed it out.
Not good
And
to be a nurse in 2020.
I know. So yeah, I got my
Yeah.
agent in 2020, so excited, like we're gonna do this, we're gonna get a publishing house, and then March hit, and pretty much everything just hit the pause button the rest of that year,
Yeah.
um, because yeah, the whole world turned upside down for a while, and so it wasn't really nothing happened with the story until we kind of got our bearings by the end of 2020, going into 2021, like, okay, now let's submit this to some publishing houses. And then it was later that summer in 2021 that Tyndale was interested in the story and they
Yeah.
offered me a contract. And it's like, so here we
Well,
are.
I'd say I think that you should like give your mother-in-law like a cake or something
I
because
know,
that's somebody that you can actually like really trust. That's somebody who
I
like
know.
actually really loves you, that would do that, that would
Yes,
give like that's super cool.
you need that person because
Yes, you really do. I mean,
yeah,
it's
I gave
true.
it to my mom, and she's just the nicest person.
Yeah.
And so all she said was, nice story. And I went to her afterward. I was like, Mom, I even accidentally changed the name of one of my characters like halfway through. She's like, yeah, that was a little confusing. And I'm like, you didn't say anything. She's like, well. So yeah, you need the mother-in-law who's like,
Yeah.
listen, honey, this is bad. Like, you gotta fix it.
Yeah. But like constructive. Sound like she made notes
Yeah.
and yeah,
And she
that's
wasn't wrong. Her main thing, she kept saying, this is a mixed mood, mixed mood. Like, are you doing?
yeah.
And it was, I know now looking back, it was because I didn't know my writer's voice at that time. And really, I have the voice of rom-com, but I was trying to
Yeah.
work it into suspense and it just wasn't working. So it wasn't until like Henry and Edith won the contest, and the agents and
Yeah.
editors, they're like, you should be writing rom-com. Like,
Right.
that makes sense
What
now.
made you think that are you like a big fan of suspense? What kind of was making you think
I
that you
enjoy reading, especially romantic suspense. Like,
hmm
romance makes my heart, that's my purpose of living. I need some romance in each like
Yeah.
story. But I do like suspense. And I think there's an author, Susan May Warren. She leads, that's who I learned a lot of my writing skills and things through. She has a writing group called, it's like Novel Academy and My Book Therapy. And when I was beginning, she led a little webinar that was focused on romantic suspense. And so that was where I got a lot of my training. But I
Oh,
think in my mind, I was more like the romantic suspense, like Romancing the Stone, like more adventure,
okay.
not necessarily police procedural, things.
Yeah.
But so that was how it started. And I think it just takes every writer a little time to figure out where story you need to be
hmm
telling, because
Yeah.
I love historical too, but yeah, I'm not gonna write it.
Right. Yeah. 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 Interesting. It's I always like hearing sort of the journey of writers and how they come up with their stories. Ho, ho, ho. We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast, especially at Christmas?
Do you enjoy the holiday previews, recaps, interviews, and bonus episodes?
If the answer is yes, please consider supporting the Hallmarkies Patreon. We need your help to do what we do both during the Christmas season and all year round.
But not only do you help a podcast led by strong, independent women by becoming a Patreon, you get to become a part of the Hallmarkies family.
Starting at only $2 a month as a patron, you will have access to our Facebook Patreon group where we talk about the movies, shows, and more all year.
We also have many monthly patron watch alongs with guests like Lacey Chabert, Natalie Hall, Paul Campbell, Mary Lou Henner, and more, giving their behind the scenes details of their films.
As a patron, you also have the chance to provide input into the podcast and even join us at different tiers.
So this Christmas season, spread some cheer to the Hallmarkies Patreon and become a member today. You won't regret it.
Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies to learn more.
That's patreon.com/hallmarkies. Would you say you're a pantser or a plotter?
So far, I've been more of a pantser. I think it's because I'm just so excited to start a story. Like, I just have a seed of an idea, and I just want to start writing, and I do better in the editing revision process. Like, I
Uh-huh.
need something to work with. But so far, most of my stories have been written before I had a contract. Like, now I'm getting further, that now I'm like, I might have to do a little bit more plotting because I do have to do a
Yeah.
ton of rewrites like later on. And so it's not the most time productive method for me to pants, but it's more fun because you're
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
we'll try this and see what happens.
Yeah. 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 So with this Dear Henry, Love Edith, is it like epistolary?
Partly,
Mm.
the idea of it is there's the two strangers, they're sharing a house, they're working opposite shifts, they haven't met, but before they meet, they're both given the wrong impression that the other person is elderly. So, and with the names like Henry and Edith, and so as they're leaving notes for each other, because she's like covering a night shift at this crisis nursery center, like volunteering, helping out, and he's gone during the day. So it's not completely told. It's not like the Guernsey, like, was that literary
Yeah.
where the whole
Right.
thing is in letters. It's
Right.
more just there's some letters and notes sprinkled throughout the story between them.
Mm. Mm. Cool. Yeah, I haven't read that one. I just read Love in Tandem. But that must have been so exciting to have that first book.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Uh,
Because it was, like I said, it wasn't the plan necessarily like, oh, here's my book that I know is going to get, like, this is the one I'm going to get published. So the way it happened and came out, and the story, like I said, I was like, this doesn't really fit with what I want to write, but it was so cute that I was like, I can't walk away with you or from you. So it was just exciting to
yeah.
And it was so cute. I mean, when I saw the cover,
Uh-huh.
and if you get the book and what they did with the interior design, it's like, oh, this is just adorable.
That's awesome. So did you that it was your contacts from this first 5 pages contest? Uh,
No, so that was the suspense. That was more, so that one is still sitting on my computer. I don't know if I'll
oh,
ever, yeah, it's still
but didn't
sitting
you say
there.
you entered both?
I did. So that one didn't win. It finaled.
Uh,
But at that point, I mean, the advice was like, you got to pick a lane and stay in it. So you either got to go
yeah,
romantic suspense or you got to go rom-com. And I liked the rom-com and was like, I think that's the lane I want to
yeah.
stay in.
Yeah. I'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's Elise Murray and her exciting book, Society Girl. Set in the mysterious world of Oxford University's secret societies, Society Girl follows Sam, a Duke's estranged daughter, as she attempts to join the most famous club of them all, the Animos Society. Her final initiation challenge is simple: find a man, convince him she's in love with him, and then break his heart in humiliating fashion. Hardened by her father's rejections, believing that the Animos Society is her key to his love and acceptance, Sam throws herself into making Daniel Best, her father's chauffeur and local musician, fall for her. But she never counted on falling in love with him right back. Fans of Colleen Hoover, Anna Hong, and Mia Sheridan will love Society Girl, a sweeping romance from bestselling novelist and screenwriter Elise Murray. Free for Kindle Unlimited users for a limited time. Go to elisemurray.com/novels/Society Girl for more information. Or you can use the affiliate link below. Talk about Love in Tandem. This is the new book. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about the story, about what's going on in the book?
Sure. Love in Tandem. Excuse me. It's about a small town, young music teacher. She's part-time, barely holding on to her job. Music program's not really the highest priority in that town. So she's desperate to raise funds. It's where her family, she wants to stay in the town. It's close to her family. She wants to keep her job. But she finds out the job's pretty much on the line. So to raise funds, she kind of stumbles into this opportunity where if she rides a tandem bicycle, of course, with somebody else, for 500 miles within, I think it was 10 days that they have, they can win this cash prize. And so that's what the story's about, but it's who she's riding with happens to be her ex-fiance's brother. He is, she's a homebody. He's this wanderer, can't stay put, always looking for the next adventure. And he kind of has his own reasons why he, money comes in handy. So he
Uh-huh.
agrees to do this with her. And so it's their kind of how they find themselves together entering this contest and then them actually riding. And it's the Natchez Trace Parkway is where they complete their little trip.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, so how did you come up with this idea?
So you would think that the idea came from an experience I had. My husband and I, before we got married, we did this. We rode a tandem bicycle down the Natchez Trace we started in Nashville, Tennessee, and ended in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So you would think, well, that was like the seed of the story, that didn't come later. The idea for this story came from one of my nursing experiences back when I was working on the trauma unit years ago. There was this guy, this patient, and I don't remember like why he was there. I'm guessing maybe a car accident or something. And he wasn't like super, super sick. He wasn't on the ventilator or anything, but he was going to have to be in the ICU for at least a few days. They're like, we're going to have to watch you. So I was his nurse, and this was back before everybody had a smartphone. Like I didn't have one. I don't think he had a phone on him. But he was telling me, he's like, hey, can you do me a big favor? I think he was traveling out of town. He's like, I'm supposed to be meeting with this old high school friend. We'd set up like a date that we were going to meet. I need to get a hold of her and just let her know that I'm not going to make it to the restaurant. But I don't have her phone number. I have her email because that's how we've been connecting. So he gave me his email and his password. I was like, can you just get in there, write her an email, tell her like I'm fine, but I'm not going to make it. And of course, I'm like, yes, yes, this is clearly the love of his life. Like, I will help you, sir. And so yeah, wrote him an email and everything was fine. But that happened a long time ago, but I was thinking of an idea for a rom-com type story. I took that experience and was like, okay, well, what if Like he didn't have the email. What if all he knew was this person's going to be at this restaurant at this time? And what if this nurse is like, all right, I'll go there in person. And then it's like, well, what could go wrong? What if she conveys the message to the wrong person? Or what if she runs into somebody from her past? So it was kind of playing with that idea is what got the story started. And then it just evolved, and eventually I'm like, okay, now I need these two characters to have a reason to be together for a long time. I'll put them on a tandem. And so then, yeah, eventually, like I said, I pants it. And then eventually,
Yeah.
after tons of rewrites, like, oh, okay, here's the story. Here's what it's
Hmm.
about.
Well, that's fun because yeah, so it starts out the story. Uh, she's in this struggling music department, and then her sister is the nurse for this woman, and the and she's before she dies, she says, "Will you go and meet at this place at this time? I'm supposed to be there." And then but then she sends her sister.
Mhm.
So she ends up showing up, and it's the same time as this
It's
guy.
her ex. Yeah, she
Yeah,
finds out,
yeah,
oh no, her ex fiance, he's getting
yeah.
remarried, and it's where they're having their rehearsal, like dinner. And so, yeah, she kind of like gets tangled into that
Uh-huh.
situation. And I love mistaken identities. I love
Uh-huh.
the fake dating relationship. So it's like having fun with that at the beginning of
Yeah.
the story.
Yeah, yeah. So they yeah, they end up riding tandem to raise money for the music program. And so you have had experience riding tandem, it sounds like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just that one time. We, my husband, he's the bike rider. I mean, he was the one that was like, "What would you think about doing this trip?" And like I said, I mean, it was back when we were dating. I say it was when I was young and in love, and I
Yeah.
was like, "Yes, let's do it." Now, we've been married about over 13 years. We've got a couple of kids. Now he's like, "Hey, what do you think about doing another trip like that?" I'm like, "I don't think about it. I'm not."
That's
No,
so funny.
his dream is to ride across the country, and I'm just like, "Are you crazy?" But I like if you can figure out a way where we're retired and
That's what you do with the kids.
yeah, like take the kids, yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see if that ever happens.
They can be the second one in the tandem.
Right.
Uh,
I,
that's
I've
what
told him I
I would
would
do.
yeah, I
Or
told him
maybe
the
this
only
mother-in-law, his
there we
mom.
go. Yes.
She sounds
You
like
two
she'd
could
be up
ride a
for it.
tandem. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the only way I'd consider doing it is like with a tour group where they set up everything. Like all you have to do is bike, and they would have to fix the food. They'd have to have everything ready because, yeah, my days of, I don't know, sweating, setting up the tent and eating
No,
scraps. Nope.
I'm with you. I am at the point where any vacation that I take has to be like super relaxing. I don't want
Yeah.
anything that will be tiring or none. No.
Yeah.
I want to do as little as humanly possible.
Right. A true vacation. I don't want to have
Yeah.
to take a vacation after my vacation to
Right.
recover.
Yeah. So I get that. Well, so how was it developing Charlotte and Zach as characters? What was that process like?
It was fun. I think there's always a bit of me in each, especially of the female characters. Like I can't help it. Um, so especially because I had experienced that, kind of putting myself in Charlotte's character, especially when they start the bike trip of like, oh yeah, this is how I was feeling like that going up that first hill. And especially, well, she's less outdoorsy. Not that I'm super outdoorsy, but I think it was fun just putting her really out of her comfort zone for the trip. Zach, I mean, he sounds like a fun time because he's the one I would be relying on. I think someone once asked me if you rode a tandem bicycle trip now with any of the characters in your book, which one would you pick? And I was like, well, definitely Zach because he knows what he's doing. Like he knows
Yeah.
how to set things up, and that's not me. Like yeah, I would not survive very long. Not that they're like really out in the wilderness, but I would need someone like Zach. So I love that type of character who he knows his strengths. I mean, he's comfortable out there the woods and things, and um, but giving him also at the beginning of the story, he's just kind of a wanderer, kind of trying to find his purpose. So getting also a chance to see more of him as the story develops, like kind of what's driving him, and help him kind of find his way. They both find their
Yeah.
way by the end.
Yeah. So then you also have Sophia and Joshua, and they get quite a bit of time. This is the sister, Charlotte's sister. So how was that kind of balancing that and developing two relationships in the story?
Yeah, so I like having a little bit of a subplot in stories to break it up a little bit. So Sophia and Joshua, they're kind of on the home front as Zach and Charlotte go off and start doing their trip. They're like, something seems a little off about this, challenge or this contest. So their storyline, they don't know each other, but they're working together to kind of like figure out what's going on, how this challenge, like, is this legit and everything. But it was a cute little romance kind of on the side because, again, I love romance. So I'm like, well, let's have kind of two little romance stories going on, the main one and then this one between Joshua and Sophia. But when I first wrote the story, Joshua had his own point of view, and it was just way too many point of views, though. So I had pulled back a little bit because they're not the main characters. Like, yeah, you get
Good.
your time on the page, but
No, I'm glad you did that because that is one thing I really think is annoying in modern literature is that like it's one thing to have two, as you have two points of view or three,
Mhm.
that to have several is fine. But it gets out of control. Like I don't know if you've read the book Wonder.
Mhm.
It's about this little kid who has um this disability and like I it's fine. It's a fine book, but it was just like ridiculous that they give a chapter to the sister's boyfriend gets a chapter. And you're just like, we don't need to know his perspective on everything. Like, so it's just like the mom, the dad, the sister, the kid, the sister's boyfriend. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh,
Well, that was one thing with Dear Henry Love Edith I learned going through the editing process with my editors at Tyndale is I had given kind of like that a character who they said this character does not he's not important enough to the story that he needs his own point of view. And so they're like, we really need to keep it focused to the main characters. So I tried to be more mindful of that for the next
yeah,
story and then
yeah.
the stories that I write from here on out.
Well, this is one of the questions in the back of your book that you have some reader questions, but so I thought it was a good one. But if you were going to spend an afternoon on a tandem bike with one of the characters, where would you, it says, which one would you pick? You already said Zach, but
Yeah.
where would you want to go? Where would you want to ride?
Oh, I think this would probably Scotland or Ireland. I don't know, somewhere
Oh,
over there. I mean, I'm not a traveler by any
yeah.
means. I hardly leave the Midwest, let alone the country. But anytime I see like Outlander or any of those over there,
Ah,
I'm just like, oh, that would be nice. And I think it just seems peaceful, like the greenery, little quaint. At least that's what I picture, little quaint
yeah.
villages and
We joke on the podcast that you can't fall in love unless you're in Ireland or Italy. Uh,
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
especially last couple of years, there have been so many movies set in Italy.
I know. And that's what I'm like, it's so like that is the go-to those places, but I'm like, but I haven't been there. I want to go there at some
Yeah.
point.
Well, I mean, that's why I think so many authors at least set their movies there because it's like, oh, I can expense it.
Yeah,
Research.
right.
I would. Are
Yeah.
you kidding? Uh, but I think I would probably pick if I could pick anywhere. I guess I wasn't thinking international, but I think I would pick like one of those long, windy highways in California by the ocean.
Yeah,
I think
that would
that
be
would
good.
be really, pretty. Like if there's some like safe places.
Right. Yeah. That was one thing I learned on the bike trip is the Natchez Trace. I mean, that part was fun. I mean, it was, and I never felt like, oh, scared of traffic or anything.
Yeah.
But when we were off it, there was one part there was no shoulder. There's these trucks zooming by with like logging trucks, huge logs. I was like, this is where we die. Okay. Like, and it was our last day. And I was just like, we almost made it. But now, like, how are we going to get through this? I hated that
Yeah.
part. That part was stressful. So, yeah, I would definitely want a nice big highway with a huge shoulder and a nice something pretty to look at on the side.
Yeah. So there wasn't much faith-based in this book. There were a few moments where they talked about God or helping them in their goals and things like that. Is that something that you kind of, is that tricky to figure out, okay, how much do I put in? How do I implement it? All of that kind of thing.
Yes. Because of the my faith is important to me and it's like I'm writing for a Christian publishing house and but I so with Dear Henry Love Edith, when we went through the first edits with that, my editor was like, you know, you're not writing redeeming love here. Like if you want to have it's not a huge spiritual arc. I mean, it's a rom-com. Like the point of this, you're entertaining, you're making people laugh, you know, and there's a romance. And they're like, if you want to have strong faith elements, that's fine, but you need to make it even throughout the whole story. And it didn't fit well with that story, so I pulled back a little bit with that one. And then the same thing happened with Love in Tandem, where one of the earlier drafts, it was a lot more of like Zach finding his faith and more about that. And the it didn't read right. Like my editors again were like what was your point or purpose with that, the faith element of it? And again, it's like it just doesn't feel natural to the story the way I was trying to do it. And I just found making it more subtle. Sometimes subtle is better and
Yeah.
pulling back a little bit on it. It's there, but it's not like by any means hitting you on the head with it.
Yeah.
So I think, and hopefully it's just more enjoyable to all readers. Like whether I think if you're looking for it, it's there. If you're not interested in that part, then it's not hitting you on the head with it
Yeah.
either. But it
Yeah.
is tricky. I think especially with rom-com because it's like again the mixed mood. Like you're having fun. Now we're gonna have this deep spiritual discussion, and so trying to work that in organically is
hmm
tricky.
Is it hard to develop that romantic tension while keeping a clean romance?
I mean, it can be. I think it's definitely possible. I think sometimes it makes it even more kind of like I think the whole hand flex scene. Oh my goodness, you know, in
Yeah.
Pride and Prejudice, like all it was a hand touch. He flexes, and women have been swooning and going crazy about
Right.
that. So I think almost in a way of keeping it like cleaner, pulling back, then it makes the little moments even more like, oh, you're
It's
building
true.
up. So but again, you gotta keep it entertaining.
Yeah.
You don't want a boring like, oh, and then because I've read those stories where I'm like, oh my goodness, just kiss or do something like
Yeah.
where it's just a little too flat or not because
hmm
you want some passion, you want some
hmm
things, you know, you want it
And
to be
there's some
entertaining.
good kisses in it.
I like
Yeah.
kisses. Yeah,
They're
I think
fun.
kisses are yeah,
Yeah.
just as can be just as good and as your open door scenes, you know, for being
hmm
like, ooh,
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, especially when they have like near kisses in the movies at least, is that like they can be effective, it can be sexy, but it also can just be like nonsensical. Like there's no way that somebody's going to answer their cell phone,
I know.
like or something like that. So it's just like you just feel like it just makes me roll my eyes.
Yes, there's
Um
times where I've been like, okay, someone knocked on the door. Go ahead and kiss anyway. Like, you got a
yeah,
minute. They're not in the room with you yet. Just kiss. Like, finish the
exactly.
kiss. Yeah.
But then like if like your child comes in and I mean that's like unreasonable
Right.
stop, thing that would stop anybody.
Yeah.
Something like that makes more sense. But yeah, I think that a lot of times that the kiss can actually like add to the romantic tension as opposed to just the near kiss because then they have to like deal with it. Then something
Right.
has happened and they have to kind of acknowledge it and and that's interesting. That awkwardness is interesting for the
Yeah.
characters.
And yeah, I think it's always fun when you're in the point of views to see how what each of them are thinking about that kiss. So yeah, I
Yeah,
enjoy
yeah,
that.
definitely. So what do you think, what would be your pitch to people say that this is what's really unique, special about this book? They should check it out.
I'd say I think the tandem bicycle, if you're looking for a different way characters are thrown together, that's a little unique to this story. But I think if you're looking for kind of what I mentioned for mistaken identity and fake dating, that isn't the whole point of the story, but it's there. Like there's just some fun elements that are there, and then the forced proximity um, brought together. I don't know. That wasn't a very good pitch.
Yeah.
I gotta smooth it out a little better, but I'd say those are the elements: fake
Yeah,
dating, forced proximity, some adventure, travel, and yeah,
a lot of
those
fun
kind of things.
elements.
Mhm.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hardy, or hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies.
Well, we have some fun get to know you questions, so we like to enter interviews with. The first one, what is the best ice cream flavor?
Oh, anything with peanut butter, chocolate and peanut
Mm,
butter, are my go-to.
yeah, yeah, that's delicious.
Mhm.
What is your favorite color?
I usually go towards the blues. Like right now, I
Yeah.
think teal is kind of, is that blue or is that green?
I think it's blue.
Okay, we're gonna go
Yeah, yeah,
teal blue. All right.
yeah. All right. What music are you into?
All right. I'm not your go-to person if you're looking for the next, like, you should check this out. I've been stuck on Harry Connick Jr. since I've been like 12 years old, but I love Harry and if I need to like be in a good mood, I go to one of his albums and he's my
Yeah.
favorite.
Hey, not good choice. All right. What is your go-to date night food?
Mexican. When I can eat my
Ah.
weight in chips and salsa, I'm a happy girl.
Yeah, good. Well, what is your go-to date night activity if you're going out doing something?
Oh, it's a good one. Our go-to, see, yeah, my husband and I, we don't do anything too exciting. We usually go eat and maybe see a movie. This wouldn't probably be my go-to, but I did do axe throwing one night, and that was actually a lot of fun.
Oh,
So I think, yeah, maybe doing something
get that
a little
angst
more
out.
active. Yes, you can really like, you better treat me right, or
Yeah,
I know how to throw an axe. Okay.
right. Cool. All right. Which do you like better, dogs or cats?
Okay, so I knew you were going to ask this question, and I've been like stressing of because all right, the short answer is dogs. Like
Uh,
dogs, I've always been a dog person. The
yeah.
longer answer is I have a 16-year-old cat named
Oh my
Tobias, who is
gosh.
my first significant other. We have done life together, okay? He
Oh.
is like truly from when he was a kitten and it was just him and me in an apartment watching Hallmark movies, then to getting married, to moving into a
Oh.
house. For a little while, we had another cat that he had to deal with, and then having babies. And now we got this dog who's truly the love of my life, too. But so I feel like I have to, there is a special place in my heart that will always beat for at least one cat, Tobias.
That's so cute. I love that. Very good. Okay. Which do you like better, beaches or mountains?
Mountains, I think.
Oh,
I
okay.
wouldn't, I haven't been to a beach in a while. Right now, either of them sounds divine. I would love
Yeah.
to get out of Illinois and see something other than cornfields for a little bit.
Yeah, I know that. I lived in Indiana for a bit, so
Yeah.
I know how that is. Okay, what is your favorite holiday to celebrate?
Oh, I mean, Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah, can't go wrong with
It's
Christmas.
hard to beat Christmas because it's like a whole
Yeah,
season as opposed to other holidays, which
right.
are just like a day or a week or something like that,
Yeah. I would
especially in
say
Hallmark.
4th of July is I mean, if I had to pick something other than Christmas, I do like the 4th of July. We usually
Yeah.
go out, see family, fireworks, all
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
grilling, and that's pretty fun too.
Yeah. Yeah. That is fun. It is fun. Would you ever write a Christmas themed rom-com?
Well, that is the plan for
Ah.
hopefully next, let's see, this 2024, maybe 2025. We're talking
Yeah.
about a Christmassy rom-com. So
Oh,
kind of
good.
been brainstorming some story ideas for that.
Oh, that's awesome. Good. Cool. All right. Last question. What is your favorite Hallmark or romantic movie?
Okay, so this one goes back a while. Do you remember The Magic of Ordinary Days?
Yes.
Yeah,
Hall of
that one.
Fame.
Yeah, I've been
Uh-huh.
stuck on that one. Like if I have to come up with one, it's just like, well, it's that one. That was because I loved it so much when it came out, and it
Yeah.
just sticks out.
It's a good one. It's a good one to pick. Very good. All right, you did it. You answered all the questions.
Woo, okay.
Thank you so much for coming and talking with us. And when is the book out? When can people get it?
Love in Tandem, right here. It releases April 2nd. So
Mm,
it's coming up really fast.
great. Very good. And if people want to follow you on socials or anything like that,
I'm most active on Instagram, and I think it's Becca Kinzer. That'd be the best place on socials. And then, of course, I have a newsletter. You can go to beccakinzer.com and follow along. That's where you'll see if you're into covers. I'm a book cover lover. I will be revealing, hopefully, in the next month or two, the cover for my next novel coming out next year. But that's where you get a lot of updates, and I do book giveaways and things. So that's another great place to find me.
congratulations on the book. That's a huge accomplishment and on both books. And so great to get to meet you. Thanks so much
Oh,
for coming on.
thank you. I had fun. I was so
Yeah.
excited to get invited.
I'd like to thank Becca for coming on the podcast. This was so much fun to get to talk with her and get to meet her. So let us know what you think about all the things that we talked about. And if you read the book, we'd love to hear your thoughts. And what you can find our affiliate link to purchase the book in the description. So make sure you check that out. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Check that out. Also, make sure you're following the podcast at Hallmarkies Pod, Hallmarkies Podcast, all of our social media. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That really helps us a lot. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have our Patreon group, which is the biggest way you can support us. So please take a look at that. And we have our merch store. Get all tons of fun Hallmark inspired designs. So thanks so much to Becca, and we'll talk to y'all later. Bye.